Ed. Good to be with you today. Phil, take a little time off. So you get me. Little trivia here for you. This is my old time slot on WVNN. Those of you listening on VNN, this afternoon, I used to be the 2 to 5 guy. Had to be like 2019 and most of 2020, but now you're like, who is this guy? Well, you hear me every Wednesday, which I guess tomorrow, for the Grand Council. I'm on with Dale Jackson. I don't know why I agreed to this, but I did. And Phil Williams, but we do it every week, so that's me uh, on the program on a regular basis. And if you want to be in touch with the program, 833-687-4448. That's the text line. That's the best way to interact with the program this afternoon. On the program today, I got Andrew Sorrell coming up in about a half hour. He's got a challenge out to his opponent, Caroline Dobson. I guess it's a pledge. We'll talk more about that in about 30 minutes. There's some other things going on in Alabama politics. Ernie Yarborough, a state lawmaker from Lawrence County, not far from this listening area. Well, I guess it technically is in this listening area. Will make time for us. He's got a couple of bills we're going to hit on, and I just kind of we'll talk about some of his thoughts on what's going on in American politics as well. Then finally, in the 4 o'clock hour, my colleague at 1819 News, where I am the editor, in case you didn't know, Craig Monger, John MacArthur died last night, and I have a MacArthur Bible, kind of, I'm just enough familiar with him, but I wanted to talk about him and his legacy. And Craig seemed like the right guy to do that. So Craig's we're gonna jump on and give a few minutes to the passing of John MacArthur. Those of you out there familiar with him, we'll talk about that coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll kick it off here just as we're going to air down in kind of central Alabama. We know the river region, as it's called, which is like Wetumpka, Prattville, and then also the Auburn Opelika area. There are ice raids underway. They're hitting these Mexican restaurants and staging deportation raids. I guess it's ICE partnered with other federal agencies and state and local law enforcement across central and eastern Alabama. So this was all in like in real time. All the news outlets in that part of the state sending out warning alarms, and we have some people there on the scene. Well, we had a person there on the scene taking pictures for us, but it does sound like the Gulf of America Task Force in partnership with it. So you're not safe if you're here illegally in Alabama. We can talk about that. I think it's what I voted for. What else we got here? We got to talk about Epstein, and the Democrats are starting to get their sea legs under them on this, and I gotta explain this to you guys. The Trump administration's got to do something here. Whether you think there's anything there or not, and we can speculate on what this all means and the possibilities. What my sort of thinking is maybe they overplayed it, and there really isn't what's there that they overhyped it just for the sake of an election. It's also like, what if it was something the CIA or some foreign intelligence agency was involved in? And obviously some very immoral things occurred. We don't know. I guess you're innocent till proven guilty, and we'll never have the opportunity to do that with Jeffrey Epstein. But if your government's engaging in unethical behavior, we ought to know about it. The assumption here is that Trump, the left's assumption, not our assumption on Rightside Radio, Trump must be involved because he is trying to downplay this and make this something that's not a big deal. That he's implicated because he's downplaying it. We don't know that to be the case. I mean, or he's covering for one of his buddies or something. So the left is cherry picking this, and this is what they do. So yesterday on in the House Rules Committee up in Washington on Capitol Hill, the Rules Committee tried to get the Democrats on the Rules Committee tried to get a bill on the floor that would force the release of all this. Republicans blocked it 8-2. But it just raises more suspicion. So here's what you need to know about that. The Democrats aren't going to let this go. The media now, I was kind of stunned when Trump first said, hey, you're still talking about this? It took a few days for the media to get in the game. But Democrats are successful in their strategy here to weaponize this. And it's kind of it's a tactical error what Donald Trump's doing to say, hey, let's just die and let this go away. This is CNN. Sources privately urging aides to let Epstein's story die down. It's just not going to go away. Especially when you hear that, they're going to double down. They're going to amplify it. The Trump administration has to do something here. They have to come out and talk about this. They got to. Even if there's nothing there, say there's nothing there. And proceed accordingly. But this is not a good look either way you look at it, either way you slice it. And kind of here's some suggestions here. I mean, what can they do? But this isn't going to go away, I guess, is the moral of the story. And Democrats are going to make sure it doesn't go away now. And Republicans, including our own Tommy Tuberville, who's kind of like, hey, we got a lot more things to worry about than this, making comments yesterday at the Alabama Grocers Association down in Miramar Beach, Florida. We got other things to worry about. It's just not going to work, guys. And we need to address it head on, I believe. One more thing before we get a break in here, the body cam footage, and I know Dell spent a lot of time on this, and some others, but this Homewood shooting, Jabari Peoples, it sounds like there were some bad decisions made by Mr. Peoples, but did he deserve to die? And maybe, you pull a gun on a police officer, but we have to take their word for it. There's a report telling us what happened, but the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency doesn't think that we need to see the camera footage yet. So here's a question. We're taxpayers here. They're mandated to wear these body cams in these police departments. Why are we paying for them? If we're treated like this is something that's a need-to-know basis. Should we see it? Or do you think they're doing the right thing here? Law enforcement is urging discretion on this. Anyway, that and more, 833-687-4448 is the text line. And I got a couple already we'll get to on the other side. Let's work at a break here. Jeff Poyer for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Jeff Poor filling in for Phil Williams. Senator Williams here on this Tuesday afternoon. Text line, you want to get involved in the program, 833-687-4448. Coming up in the next segment, our state auditor, also a candidate for Secretary of State, Andrew Sorrell. So please make sure you stay tuned for that. John writes, what does he write here? I guess there's going to be two JPs on this show today. Also writes, Jeff Poor, you are way better host than Dale Jackson. Much more honest and professional. You hear that, Dale? Let's see what else we got here. Hey, is it possible Trump is being threatened by somebody more powerful than him, and that's why he won't release the Epstein files? I don't think so. There may be like a real national security reason here. And our government may have been engaged in something very unethical. I mean, the CIA, guys, that is your black helicopter agency. They're much more competent than the FBI. Just no doubt about it. And they may be doing something really terrible these last with regards to Epstein. Now, maybe they've cleaned that all up in the time since. Or maybe there's a foreign intelligence agency, one of our allies. I mean, those are possibilities. And I don't think anybody's threatening Trump. I think if they really wanted to undermine Trump, they would have done so during the 24 cycle. And this is what people say. Well, they didn't undermine Trump because the Democrats are in on it too. But what have the media ever not cherry picked? Their hypocrisy knows no bounds. For example, when they talk about, for some reason, about a month ago, some of the Democrat politicians and some of the media were saying, well, we need to look at Trump's cognitive decline. He's losing it. It was like 4 years of Biden. Not a word, not a peep about, it was all Russian disinformation or some nonsense when we saw Joe Biden stumbling off in the bushes. That he was perfectly fine, sharp as a tack, nothing to see here. So, that being said, the Democrats would have just done it and then, lied to you about any Democrats involved, or they would have said the Democrats involved aren't running for president. I mean, do we think Biden was involved in Epstein? I don't think so. Or Kamala Harris was. And it would have been a layup for them because they could have said, well, look at the connection here. Here's a picture of Trump and Epstein. Kamala Harris, she's never been around this guy. So that's why I'm skeptical of the idea that Trump, and Trump, I think they did find one circumstance where he did say that he would declassify Epstein, JFK, or whatever else it was. So, my guess was always, it was always this to me that, okay, maybe there could be nothing there. It could be kind of a nothing burger. And they overhyped it because they wanted more engagement. They wanted more noise. They wanted more pro-Trump sort of activity, especially on social media from the Laura Loomers and Jack Sobiak and guys like that, just to kind of gin up the electorate. And then they get it, and they may have thought there was something there, legitimately. And then you get there, and then you realize that it's either there's nothing there, or it's not what you thought it was, or it's something very sensitive. And I mean, I'm just speculating here. You want to give these guys the benefit of the doubt, but what you can't give them the benefit of is that they handled this really well at all. I don't think this is a fireable offense for Pam Bondi either. Listen, guys, when has there ever been a popular attorney general in America? I was thinking about this. We go all the way back to like Ed Meese or something during the Reagan years, and he wasn't even that popular. Eric Holder did okay with Democrats. But here's what happens. We could go. Let's just. I'm gonna start rattling them off here. Before Pam Bondi, there was Merrick Garland, and the right obviously not gonna like him at all, and then half the left didn't think he was aggressive enough toward Trump or the J6ers. You go Trump's first term. No one liked Barr. Jeff Sessions had a hard time for his recusal. You go back to even like we get Lynch, Holder, who kind of just existed. Alberto Gonzalez, Casey, Ashcroft, not popular. Janet Reno during Clinton. And they thought she was not outspoken enough against the impeachment in that investigation. So we don't have very popular attorneys general in America because it's usually this. The party out of power is not going to like any of the cabinet appointees of the current president. So you lose, up to 50% of the country right there. And then the base thinks that the DOJ and the prosecutors are not aggressive enough in their investigations against their political opponents or their, adversaries or whoever was talking a big game during campaigns about all the wrongdoing that was going on. So you lose a little bit there. And for that reason, that office is a lightning rod. It's just you don't have I think my AG is doing a fantastic smash up job. And I think that's the case with Pam Bondi here. Darlene, please tell Phil that I tried to watch him on CNN last night, but it was so painful that I switched back to Fox. I am so sorry. I felt like I abandoned him to the wolves. I saw a little bit of that. He did a good job. Look, that's a good gig, being the conservative on those panels. And you look at a guy like Scott Jennings, who really handles it very well. You just wonder how long until one of these guys is going to wind up with Fox. I think Scott Jennings. He's going to have a radio show now. Was talked about as a potential candidate for U.S. Senate when McConnell stepped aside. That's obviously not going to happen. But it's so easy in that circumstance, I feel like, because you have 4 or 5 other people just parroting talking points with no critical analysis whatsoever. And that's a good gig if you could handle it. And Sarah Williams did a good job there. Made the most of that opportunity. Text line 833-687-4448. Something I brought up a little earlier was sort of the discussion about body cam footage. And we're going to do more on this 1819 News, 1819news.com. You need to check that out. Make sure you get the newsletter there. Do you think that this shooting in Homewood, Alabama, they ought to release the body cam footage? You're keeping up with it. Let me know on the text line. We got to work in a break here. We'll pick it up on the other side. Jeff Bohr in for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
Welcome back to Right Side Radio. Jeff Poor in on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams, Senator Williams, solid conservative and just plain right. Still to come on the program, we got Ernie Arborough going to be with us about an hour from now, and then my colleague at 1819 News, Craig Munger. We'll talk about the passing of John MacArthur. So that's coming up in the 11 o'clock hour. Please stick around for that. But joining us now on the line, he's our state auditor. He's a candidate for Secretary of State. Andrew Sorrell joins us. Andrew, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. I appreciate you getting me on. I'll admit I was doing a little better 2 weeks ago before I had an opponent in my race, but hey, I'm still doing pretty well.
Yeah. So, well, aside from the opponent, talk a little bit about the campaign, and we'll get to some specifics here in a moment.
Well, things are going very well. I think I've been in 55 counties doing a campaign event. I'll be in number 56 on Thursday night. That's going to be up in your listeners' area right now. I got a Limestone County event. And 57 on Saturday. I'm speaking to the GOP Men's Club breakfast there in Huntsville, which, you know, is Albert Peters started that group many decades ago. He's passed on now, but still hundreds of people go to that event. So I am burning up the campaign trail. I'm trying to run a real solid grassroots campaign, but also trying to raise money. And we've had a lot of success with that. We've been breaking some fundraising records. I'm very pleased. We brought in $63,000 in June. Very little of that was PAC money, only a couple thousand that was PAC money. So these are like actual individuals and businesses that are supporting my campaign. And people are fired up. They're excited to support me because they know I'm going to do the things that I say that I'm going to do. How do they know that? Because I've already been elected to 2 other positions and I have a track record. And that's something in politics. A track record can hurt you if you got a bad one, and it can really help you if you got a good one. When I ran for state house in 2018 in what was deemed an unwinnable race by most Republicans, I was challenging a 28-year incumbent Democrat in a seat that had been, Democrat 150 years. Managed to win that seat, get 52% of the vote in that general election. Campaigned on the issue of constitutional carry. Said I was going to support that bill, try to see that bill through if I got elected. And what do you know? I actually introduced the bill, carried it 4 years, built the sponsor list from 7 up to 38, including the Speaker of the House my last year there. So it ended up being another legislator's version of the bill that passed. But I followed through on the things I said I was going to do. I had a perfect voting record on election integrity issues, which I'm very proud of and is serving me well now as a candidate for Secretary of State. So that's excited the grassroots, and I think it's excited my donor base. And I'm very, very pleased with the outpouring of support I've received so far.
Well, you're doing something. This is not easy. I mean, these back-to-back election cycles, statewide campaign, wear you down. I guess if anything, you got kind of a head start. You know the terrain fairly well. I mean, it's a complicated state. It took me 20 years to figure out Alabama, and when working in different parts of the state to know how it all works. But you're getting immersed in it just in these last 5 years.
It's amazing how much you learn about the state as you travel around. I was in a little community called Bermuda a couple weeks ago, and the guy I was with said, no, it's not Bermuda, it's Bermuda is how they pronounce it. I said, I didn't know that. I live 4.5 hours from there, but I'll know that next time I'm there. I remember I did a campaign event in Bug Tussle, which is in Coleman County, Alabama. I remember I went and there was about 60 people at this, and this little old lady came up to me. She said, well, I guess I'll vote for you. I haven't seen your opponent, heard from your opponent. And I thought, you probably never will, because I doubt my opponent's coming to Bug Tussle. So there are so many little communities around Alabama, and you try to get into all of them that you can. If you get to Birmingham, those people they're used to seeing political candidates, and that's good. You got to get to Birmingham. There's a big voting base there. But if you go to Bug Tussle, those people really remember that you were there, because it's rare for them to see, especially a statewide candidate, come to those small communities. So again, trying to run the grassroots campaign, but you got to have resources to win. And I've set a fundraising record when I ran for state auditor. I more than doubled the previous fundraising record for the position. So I'm no slouch at fundraising. So we're in a good position, but we've got a tough opponent, and we've got to keep our nose to the grindstone. And yeah, it can be a little exhausting, kind of running statewide back to back, having 2 tough races back to back. But I love this stuff. I'm energized by it, and I genuinely love people. Somebody said the other day, "What are you in politics for?" And I said, "I love people. And if you don't love people, don't run for office. Politics is people. If you don't love meeting and talking to people, asking for their vote, asking for a campaign contribution, and that bothers you, hey, it's probably not for you, and that's okay. But I think it is for me. I enjoy it. I thrive on it, and I think I enjoy following through, doing the things that I say I'm going to do, and I enjoy being effective at what I do. And I think I'm going to deliver the voters what they want from their next Secretary of State, which is serious election integrity. We're going to expand the Alabama voter integrity database. We're going to partner with more states and exchange voter lists. We've identified 40,000 duplicates on the voter rolls, people registered to vote in Alabama and some other state. We're only partnered with 10 states right now. What if we partnered with 30 states? How many more duplicates could we eliminate? Jeff, I've got a friend got married 5 years ago, moved away, votes in another state, still on the Alabama voter rolls today. We can solve that problem. We just got to partner with more states.
Let's talk about the election itself and being down ballot, understanding that there's a lot of oxygen being sucked out of the room here. You got probably not a very competitive gubernatorial election, but certainly a competitive Senate race. Then you're going to have a competitive lieutenant governor's race, a competitive attorney general race. You go, and then a Secretary of State. And I guess I kind of mastered the art of the ultimate down ballot election, which is, as our friend Dale Jackson calls it, the counter desk. But getting people aware, building up the name ID, I mean, and doing it for a year and a half and explaining, like, well, this is why you should care. I mean, at this stage of the game, this is what you're doing, and you pretty much do this for the entirety or for the duration of the campaign, I would think.
I think auditor is down ballot, as you described. You kind of said it was like the ultimate down ballot. I'd say Public Service Commission may be further down ballot than auditor. People really have no idea what the Public Service Commission does, and the candidates running for that do a great job of explaining it. I've listened to them. I've learned a lot about the Public Service Commission listening to those people campaigning for it. But yeah, auditor, Public Service Commission, they're important positions, but they are down ballot. I don't think Secretary of State is down ballot. I think Secretary of State is mid ballot. That's what I'd refer to it as. And the reason I say that is because 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I would have said Secretary of State's down ballot. But people care about this race now, and it's all because of the 2020 election. When it happened, I said this election was rigged. It was stolen. Donald Trump was right. There were unfair things that happened. Pennsylvania was violating their own state laws, allowing votes to be counted that were postmarked by Election Day but didn't arrive until 10 days later. Well, guess what? That's illegal. There's 40,000 people identified in Arizona on the voter rolls as likely illegals. Well, Trump lost Arizona by 11,000 votes. Can we say absolutely for sure that's why he lost? Well, no, but I mean, common sense would dictate. Do you think the illegals were voting for Donald Trump? I'm going to guess no. So, you had the whole Russia hoax, the laptop story that got buried. I mean, so many things, so many people were conspiring against Donald Trump, and I do think that they stole that election from him. And when that happened, everyone in America started understanding the importance of having a good Secretary of State. And yes, Alabama has good elections. We vote in person on Election Day with a photo ID on a paper ballot. The major four tenets of election integrity, we already do, and we do right. We're not going to change those. There's bills introduced to change those things all the time. I'm not going to let that happen. But there's things we're not doing. We're not slashing business service fees enough. We got to make Alabama a more business-friendly environment. We've got to audit our elections. We've had an audit bill introduced by Representative Wood. 2 years, gotten out of the House, failed in the state Senate. Unacceptable. We've got to pass election audits. The only way we know that the tabulator is counting the votes correctly is if we hand count the ballots and verify that it matches the tabulator result. And we're going to have a new division of election integrity in the Secretary of State's office as well, Jeff. We're going to have 5 people who clean up the voter rolls and who investigate the claims of voter fraud that come pouring in. That's what the people of Alabama want. That's what they demand. That's what they're going to get if they vote for me as Secretary of State.
And that's what we think. You're the state's top election official. The office really has gotten a little more important, and now that people, I don't know, skepticism is the right word about elections now, but the 2020 election has certainly put a bigger emphasis on that.
No, that's absolutely true. And I'll tell you another thing we've got to do. We've got to have a different election integrity board. Right now, what we have is a voter advisory or voter registration advisory board. And that was probably very useful and served its purpose. But everyone in Alabama's already registered. You registered to vote if you get food stamps, if you go get a driver's license. I mean, at college, our board of registrars members do a fantastic job registering voters in Alabama. We don't need advice on how to register voters. What we need advice on is election integrity. And I'm going to change that board. We're going to have the voter registration and election integrity advisory board. We're going to have probate judges, sheriffs, circuit clerks, registrars, and yes, even ordinary Alabama citizens who are concerned about election integrity. We're going to put them on that board. And I want to get feedback and suggestions on what we can do to make Alabama's elections better.
Well, and discuss this if you would, Andrew. The recounts, and we talked. You and I talked about this a lot during session. Very end, Debbie Wood, Bill, but we know of discrepancies where the tabulators didn't always come out spot on. Maybe they missed a ballot or two, but it was just kind of shrugged off. I think it was Dallas County. You said. But we really do have some, I don't know, the vulnerabilities, but some places where there certainly could be some improvement.
Well, we really don't know how bad it is. We don't have an election audit process, so we don't know how bad it is. But in 2021, my friend Representative David Stanridge, who's a former probate judge from Blount County, he introduced a piece of legislation that was a one-time election audit. And Merrill was pushing this bill at the time, and it audited 3 counties. These counties had to volunteer. One of them was Marshall County, one of them was Houston, and one of them was Dallas County. Well, when it was a one-time audit only, though, after the 2022 election. Well, guess what? The Marshall County, Houston County tabulators counted correctly. When they hand counted the ballots, it matched the tabulators. There was no discrepancies. Dallas County, they were off by 2 votes. No one's been able to explain to me why. I've called the probate judge there. He said, Andrew, we hand counted it 3 times. The hand count is correct. The tabulator was wrong. Well, if that doesn't concern you, then you're not very serious about election integrity. Is it just that one tabulator that had a problem, or do we have a larger problem throughout Alabama and other counties? Well, I don't know, but there's only one way to find out. Pass Debbie Wood's election audit bill. Now, as you know, Representative Wood has resigned. She will not be back next year. So there's going to be somebody else carrying this bill. I don't know who it is yet, but I am supportive of this bill. I've written op-eds in support of the bill. And I actually want to make the bill even stronger because Debbie Wood's bill is good in that it audits general elections. Well, let's be honest, Jeff. 90% of the elections in Alabama are not decided in the general. They're decided in the Democrat primary or in the Republican primary because 90% of the seats in Alabama are very, very blue or very, very red. The bill doesn't audit the primaries. We need to be auditing I want to audit every election. Primaries, runoffs, generals. If we're going to do it right, if somebody's going to try to steal an office, 90% of the time they're going to be stealing it in the primary, not in the general, right? So we need to be auditing the runoffs and the primaries as well.
Last question, we'll get you out of here on this. Talk about your, I guess it's a pledge you're pushing, but you have, as you mentioned, an opponent now. What's that all about?
Well, I'm just challenging my opponent to run a clean campaign. And I put a clean campaign pledge up on my Facebook page. I sent her a text message with it yesterday. And we're trying to follow Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican. So, look, we need to set an example. We're running for the top elections office in the state. We need to set an example for other candidates. We don't need to engage in dirty, sleazy tactics, negative campaigning. We need to run positive campaigns, issue-based. Let's debate the issues. I'm confident that my campaign platform is going to appeal to a Republican primary voter base. Let's have a discussion and a debate about that. Let's not get into all the negative personal type attacks. And that's what the challenge says. So we're waiting a response. I hope that she will sign that. Hope we keep the campaign clean. And you could talk to my former opponents. I had a total of 5 opponents when I ran for auditor, if you include the Libertarian and the general. I had 2 opponents when I ran for state house, primary and general. Even the Democrat will tell you, I didn't do negative campaigning. That's not who I am. That's not how I campaign. I talk about my qualifications. I talk about my experience. I talk about what I want to accomplish if I win. And I don't do negative campaigning. I'm hopeful that my opponent will join me in making that pledge.
Andrew, we've got to wrap it up here. If folks want to know more about your campaign, know more about your pledge, where can they look?
Yeah, lots of easy ways to do that. AndrewSorrell.com. Sorrell is Sorrell. You can also find me on Facebook, Andrew Sorrell for Secretary of State. That's where the pledge is posted. And just shout out to your listeners. I'm a North Alabama guy. I live in Muscle Shoals and spent the last 34 years of my life there and own businesses in Huntsville, go to church in Decatur. So I'm a North Alabama guy. I appreciate their consideration and their vote May 19th in the Republican primary.
Andrew, best of luck to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. Andrew Sorrell, your state auditor running for Secretary of State. We got to work in a break here. Jeff Poor in for Phil Williams on this Tuesday afternoon. Solid conservative and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Jeff Poor in on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams. Solid conservative and just plain right. Coming up in the next hour, State Representative Ernie Yarborough will make time for us. Looking forward to that. A few texts to get to here. Let's see what we got here. Beth writes, I watched the CNN show last night. Very painful, but I figured Phil had to be there. I'd watch it until his part was over. How he kept his cool, but he was the total professional. Well, guys, I mean, like, I get it. Like, if I didn't do this for a living, I probably wouldn't watch any of this stuff. But there is some value in watching CNN and MSNBC, especially like Fox gets at times a little repetitive. And if you watch like a Newsmax or there's value in this. The thing I learned from watching MSNBC and CNN, it's just how remarkably choreographed the media are in this country. The buzzwords, they don't get to these buzzwords and these phrases they use by accident. That it's a very coordinated, and they work in concert. And I mean, like, a lot of it's just wrong or intellectually dishonest, but they're very, very wedded, very disciplined messaging on the left. And that's what you're up against on a daily basis. There's some of that on the right. They send out the talking points, but I got to give it to the left watching this, and they're coordinated. And you learn a lot from it because it's easy to poke holes in their arguments. It's all professional wrestling, first off. And you may not realize, so I, a professional of the media for 20 years now, I lived 8 years in Washington, D.C., and I went up there very naive, very young, wet behind the ears. And I really thought, like, well, these guys, they must not like each other. There must be like the right wingers bar and the left wingers bar, or no, but they all intermingle. They all have, cocktail receptions, and again, you see the stars of who you perceive to be the guys on Fox, sipping wine spritzers with the guys from CNN all the time. And the same applies to Capitol Hill. I mean, there are some real true believers on the Hill. Don't get me wrong. But there's also a lot of friendships and, things you don't see behind the cameras. What you see on CNN is totally pro wrestling. And they're catering to that audience. Now, I don't know who the audience is these days. And I got to give you a whole dissertation on media and the future of media. And it's really, I mean, you really got to look at it like their ability to turn a profit. What's the value? And it's very expensive, these news gathering operations. And these MSNBC and CNNs don't really news gather anymore. Now NBC News does, and they'll sometimes funnel some of their coverage through MSNBC. But what you need to know, the value in a media operation in 2024, maybe not so much 2025 now, was that they really believe they moved the needle. They shape public opinion. And that's why you would have these expensive news gathering operations. But we'll pick it up on the other side. I'll get into that a little bit more. Jeff Poor in on this Tuesday for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. I am Jeff Poor. I'm the editor of 1819 News, 1819news.com. Please, I encourage you to check that out. Also, you can hear me on FM Talk 1065 if you're ever in the Mobile area. I'm the morning host from 9 to noon. I got some other things. I'm a contributing editor at Breitbart and have a column at the weekly publication here in Mobile called the Lanyap. I am sort of their, I think I've been the token conservative or what, but I've been working for them for a long time, pushing more than 20 years. So you can check me out if you so choose. That's who I am, filling in for Phil today, and grateful for the opportunity. My old time slot here on, at least for those of you listening on WVNN in Huntsville, this is where I got my start. For whatever reason, 2018, I got back in the Alabama game in 2017. I kind of got sent here by my old boss, Steve Bannon, to cover the Doug Jones, Roy Moore Senate race. I was here for the primary, and as things usually go, wound up back full-time in Alabama, but had been here in Mobile for a little bit before leaving to go to Washington, D.C., and worked for a bunch of cool people on the way, Tucker Carlson included. I was up there, and then went to go work for Steve Bannon when he took over Breitbart, and Steve said, well, you could live wherever you want. And my wife and I got out of D.C. and lived in Destin, Florida, of all places, for a little bit. But being the proximity of the Florida Panhandle to Alabama, it was just too close, and then eventually wound up back here and now reside in a place called Fairhope across the Mobile Bay, if you're familiar with the area down in Baldwin County. So broadcasting from there today, in case you're wondering. But this is where I got my first start in radio. Dale Jackson said, "You can make a good radio host," after he yelled live and local at me. And taught my wife to do it. And next thing you know, like January 3rd, 2019, I am a full-time radio host on WVNN. I did that for a little while, weathered COVID, and then got an opportunity to come down south. And this is where we have settled down, if you would, after moving around a bit. So here we are. Text line, you want to be in touch with the show, 833-687-4448. That's how you interact for now with Rightside Radio. And I'm keeping an eye on the text line, so keep them coming. We do appreciate any of the feedback. Ernie Yarborough, a state lawmaker from Lawrence County, will be with us in about a half hour or so. And then in that 4 o'clock hour, Craig Munger, my colleague at 1819 News, we're going to talk about John MacArthur. He's seemed appropriate with his passing. We're going to talk a little with him about the late John MacArthur. Died last night and was kind of a giant in evangelical circles. Let's see what we got here. Mark from Decatur, I'd like to remind everyone that each $1 billion cut to government spending is about $750 per household. Most people wouldn't pay $8 subscription for PBS and NPR, yet we are doing it now. I got mixed views on this, and I go round and around with people. In theory, the public broadcasting is not a bad idea. In theory. The way it's being executed is horrible. But my view of it is, I mean, there's some places in America where there's just no... I mean, you may be in a media market, and you can put up a satellite dish, and you can, have sort of a window into the outside world. But there really are places in America where NPR is it, and PBS is it. And you have to put up the antenna, and that's the only over-the-air broadcasting you can reach. Some remote places in Maine. And it's, in theory, like I said, it's a good window to the outside world for some people. Just to, be aware. But what's happened is it's been co-opted by sort of an ideological left. And they do raise money. They do have fundraisers, and the people who give money to that are ideologues. They're left wingers. That's what they do. So we've proven we're not. I mean, just like with anything in government, we've proven we're not like responsible. Are the people that we put in government, who work in government, not the people you elect necessarily, the bureaucrats, that they have an ideological view of the world. You're not a free market Ron Paul von Mises Institute libertarian who goes to work at the Department of Commerce. Typically, I'm sure there's a few, but the idea there is you go to work for the government because you have some kind of inherent belief in the power of government being a force for good. So these government agencies, and by extension, public broadcasting, not as a pseudo-government agency, because it gets a subsidy, have these ideological biases. And PBS does a lot of different kind of programming, what they would say educational, I guess. But, and it certainly has a leftist agenda. But they just look at that as like truth, or that's straight down the middle. But there is like an indoctrination component. They have a duty. They're duty bound to show you the right way, or your children the right way to live. It's just totally, totally misguided. Because it violates a lot of the cultural values and norms for people who, foot the bill for that stuff. Now, the news coverage is, I think, worse. It's sort of less talented version of mainstream media types who go to work for like NewsHour or All Things Considered. They put like David Brooks on or whoever. That's their Republican. And they won't do a critical analysis and say, well, this, David Brooks, he's fine, New York Times columnist or whatever, with some conservative impulses. But that's not like mainstream conservative view or ideology in America. It's much different now. It doesn't even take the voices that represent sort of Trump's Republican Party seriously. They're caricatures. They're not. They shouldn't be taken seriously. We're not going to pay them any attention. That's where public broadcasting is wrong. And there's no sense to think you can reform it. The institutional corruption and bias and ideology is too far into it. And so, I mean, at one time in America, there was probably value in public broadcasting, and now in the internet age and satellite transmissions and even like satellite radio or whatever, it needs to go by the wayside. It can exist if people want to prop it up like a nonprofit, give money to it. Well, let me tell you a little something about NPR and then becoming a student of radio the last 5 years or so. They get the best of everything. They have the best mics, the best engineers. You ever listen to NPR? Don't listen to it, the content, just the quality of the broadcast. They're usually like $3,000 mics and processors that are like 10 grand. And I mean, it's a very gold-plated sort of thing where like conventional FM, AM radio, the joke is, like, you've got to be an expert in 1990s technology to be an engineer for a lot of these radio clusters around the country now. They just didn't update their technology. And it's, it works. Why bother? But with NPR, they just, they could do it a lot more efficiently. I mean, I think there's a lot of bloat in public broadcasting, to be honest. And they talk about, oh, but it's so hard. And here's was it the guy with the Americans for Prosperity was on my show. My show in Mobile. I think he was on with Dale too. Gentleman named Adam Thompson. And he's like, he's a subscriber to Alabama Public Television. And they were using state resources to lobby their subscribers to tell their congressman not to go forward with some of these cuts, because if we go with these cuts, we're going to lose $3 million or whatever. And, you know, these guys already get like $19 million from the ETF, the Alabama Education Trust Fund, for this last fiscal year. How much is enough? And you wonder that if they're not just kind of running a bloated ship, but they're also using government, or they're using potentially taxpayer resources to lobby you, the public, for their whatever their political objective is. 833-687-4448. Got another text or two to get to. Stay tuned. This is Jeff Poor in for Phil Williams on Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Jeff Poor in on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams. Taking some time off. You get me? Well, it pales in comparison to Senator Williams, but we'll make do the best that we can. Coming up here shortly, State Representative Ernie Yarborough made some time for us to talk about kind of how I haven't talked to him in a bit, but I get to hear from him when I'm up in this area, so we'll make the most of that and some of the bills he has pre-filed for 2026, which sounds kind of crazy. We're already talking about 2026. We're just barely halfway through 2025, but they start early in the Alabama legislature in 26. And what they do typically, historically, they go early in the year in election years because they want to get back campaign primaries are like, what, May now? And you need to wrap up the session as soon as you can so you can spend some time back in the district preparing for whatever, if you have an election challenge or whatever it may be. So it'll be here before you know it, I guess, is sort of what I need to say. John writes, they should always release body cam footage if they have it. And I agree with that, John. I think like I said, the idea here, you're going to mandate police officers wear body camera footage. And this was all sort of a product of the whole George Floyd saga, Black Lives Matter, and our law enforcement agencies weren't playing by the rules, and we need to make sure that they're held to account. Okay, so at taxpayer expense, I think most police officers in this country wear some kind of body camera. They're not cheap. We're paying for it. But what's happening in Alabama, at least, it's not meant to be a check on power for the sake of the people. It's becoming a tool for power to protect police officers. And look, you gotta back to blue. It's not an easy job. You're in harm's way all the time. I get it. Our law enforcement gets a raw deal in the court of public opinion. Too much. But in this state, with body camera footage, it's the discretion of the law enforcement and the investigating agencies. And sorry if I don't necessarily trust the government, and that's a conservative impulse to be skeptical of the government. When they tell us we're withholding it because we are protecting the integrity of the investigation or whatever it may be. The law needs to change. And I'm not saying that, automatically that you should release these officer-involved incidents, that you need to release the footage immediately, because sometimes you do have a prosecution. Sometimes you do have to protect from tainting or contaminating the jury pool or whatever. I mean, there's times it's appropriate. But what I would tell you is I don't think it needs to be the investigating agency or law enforcement. It needs to be a judge. It needs to be some kind of third party. We got to put a check on these guys. This is what this is for. And a lot of times, so at AL.com, John Sharp had a story kind of laying out a lot of this. And it was always hard to get these the footage released, even when they dropped the charges against that accused officer of wrongdoing or whatever, mishandling lethal force. And they said we're not investigating it anymore. Well, what about the body camera footage? Well, we're not going to release that either. And in one case down in Baldwin County, they had to go to court, and it took a lanyap and a public records request, and there was a real fight, a court fight over it. And this was like months after everything was settled and done. They just aren't willing to let this stuff out. And I think it's entirely appropriate to, that maybe they are withholding some of this to protect themselves. Mike in Florence had never understood the rationale behind AM radio in severe weather. As I can remember, as long as I can remember, the advice was to tune into AM to such and such. During storms, AM radio rarely tunes in. Every lightning strike causes interference, and at night, forget it. The same way I've said the argument about the marijuana is natural means it's good for you is invalid because asbestos is also a natural. And I also say severe weather argument for AM radio is invalid. So once upon a time, I mean, there was not really much FM out there. It was just public broadcasting. But AM radio for spoken word seemed like a match. I mean, Rush Limbaugh and really saved AM radio because you didn't need high quality broadcasts for the spoken word like you do music. And that's sort of where the AM radio idea, or what made that a thing, Mike. But we'll spend some time on this throughout the program. Y'all stay tuned. Jeff Poor in for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio. Solid conservative and just a plain right.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
Welcome back to Right Side Radio. Jeff Poorhead on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams on Right Side Radio. Solid conservative and just plain right. Coming up in about an hour, my colleague at 1819 News, Craig Monger, we're going to talk about the passing of John McLaughlin last night. So stay tuned for that. But joining us now from y'all's neck of the woods, and I thought it would be good to get him on. My friend, he's a member of the Alabama legislature and solid conservative guy, appropriate for this sitting. State Representative Ernie Yarborough joins us on the line. Representative, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate you filling in. And it's just amazing to see how God has blessed the radio show there and the work that's being done. So thanks for the opportunity to speak and share my voice.
Well, and thank you for coming on. Let's start here. It's clearly the off season, as they say, for the Alabama legislature, and a lot of the attention is on the election cycle. Very interesting races at the top of the ballot, for sure. But I've talked to some of your colleagues in the last, I don't know, over the last couple of months, and I tell you, it seems Representative a little slower than normal. Not as many controversies bubbling up, and but I mean that's to be expected. It may be in an off cycle year, but how's your off season been?
Oh, it's going great. We at the end, obviously at the end of last session, there was some things kind of slowed down in the Senate. There was one day in particular in the House that we passed, like it was a Thursday. And I will never forget. We passed them. I mean, it was like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, just fantastic bills that I was just, I don't know that I've ever been more proud of one day's work than that day. But, we sent several good pieces of legislation upstairs, and through various reasons of, maybe a couple of members of the Senate, things slowing down. Things didn't get passed, but I think my focus was therefore at the end of the session. I pre-filed a couple of bills to get movement because I feel like that there's steam and momentum building. And you referenced those statewide races that are I think people feel like the work of things like Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, maybe some 1819 News and API and other groups, and no doubt I think probably the steps of Tommy Tuberville, governor to be, probably Coach Tuberville, is, I think we just continue to see this. It feels like this push from various angles, to make Alabama more and more conservative. And so I'm cautiously optimistic with the two bills that I pre-filed that will get movement. Not for my sake, but for the good of the people of Alabama. So I don't know that I've ever been more excited to be a member of the House.
Yeah, and all the knocks on Speaker Ledbetter, and this is me talking, but I mean, I lived through Democrat rule in this state, and I remember just the frustration with the Alabama legislature growing up, and being a conservative, and the teachers union, and Paul Hubbard kind of acting as a shadow governor at times. But I know there's room for improvement, and it could be much, much better, Representative. But I mean, this is much better than it used to be, and I would even argue. Now, I don't know the inner workings of what's going on, but I would say I put it ahead of. If he's listening, well, it is what it is. But I'm much more satisfied now with Speaker Ledbetter than Mike McCutcheon or. And we know how the Mike Hubbard saga ended. What's your sort of view on? I mean, like you said, it could be ideally more conservative in Montgomery. There's no argument about that, but it's not terrible.
Well, I think that credit where credit is due. This last session was just, I don't know. I just feel like that each session that I've been in the legislature, moving through this last session, and obviously I speak from a limited perspective because I'm a freshman, and there's obviously, it takes time. Like it takes time to settle in and figure out and begin to understand and how do I stand for what I believe in? How do I stand for what my district has suffered for and needs, and the state needs relief and to defend, Article 1, Section 35 type of values. The sole object and the only legitimate end of government, Alabama state constitution, is to protect the people and the enjoyment of their life, liberty, and property. And so how do you learn, build relationships and learn those things and walk that out? Being a good, just an enjoyable person. You're going to be a good person, but principled too, because these things really matter. And so, like I said, I just felt like, just from my limited perspective as a freshman, that this past session, like I said, that one Thursday was just such a highlight for me. And also, there was another bill that I really wanted, and to the speaker's credit, when it was the bill on the release time instruction, and it died in the House, but it came back through the Senate, and they brought it to the state government committee because they wanted to get it out on the floor. And I think, when it became obvious that there were certain superintendent or school, education, whatever associations that fought this in our committee and ended up being a tie vote and died, to the speaker's credit and to Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth's credit. I mean, Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth ripped him a new one online about that because, this is Alabama. This is not New York. This is not California. Okay. And so there were a lot of things that I saw, again, from my limited perspective as a freshman, where you go from just trying to keep your head above water to beginning to get your feet grounded, see, analyze, watch, learn, look, listen, things that were, to me, were harbingers, good things that were harbingers of what's coming. And I think that, some of that probably is all this post-COVID stuff. People are just, they see things now that can't be unseen. And it feels like that maybe as I watch more and more people, announce for races across the state, it just feels like more grassroots Alabamians are getting involved, are running for races, running for seats, being more vocal. And I think every Alabamian should be excited about that, because when the grassroots people start paying attention and get involved and look at financial reports and who pays whose political bills and on and on and on it goes, that is a good thing, because we are a representative government and we need our people to be involved.
We'll talk about this, and I don't know what your expectations were. I mean, you upset an incumbent. Well, I don't know if it was necessarily an upset, but you defeated an incumbent. It's a very hard thing to do in a lot of places, and I assumed it was very hard in your district. But you're a freshman, and here now you have 3 years under your belt. You're about to embark on your 4th year of the quadrennium. How has it been relative to your expectations before you even served a day here, and now you have 3 years? I mean, talk about that. I mean, I'm sure it's different, but in some ways, do you feel like you're making headway?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I feel like that on the one hand, there are things that I knew just as a regular Alabama citizen, conservative, church-going, politically involved, father of 4, that there are things that were frustrations of mine just as a common citizen that have been verified, that the influence of special interest groups is far too much in Montgomery. But I also came to realize that part of the reason, this is kind of the education, part of the reason why is because we, the people, have not been as involved as we should be. Case in point, this past session, right? PBM reform. And I'm telling you, those pharmacists from across the state, whether they showed up and showed up and showed up and showed up, and that I've never seen a group in my life fight for something like how they fought. They did it honorably, but man, they did it passionately, and they were fighting for their financial future and for their families. And I thought, man, what a great example of how to get involved and get engaged and show up in Montgomery week after week after week. And those are all voters, right? Those aren't just special interest groups that don't really vote in your district. Those are all voters, moms and dads running businesses. So I would say on the one hand, some of the frustrations have been confirmed about the influence of special interest and PACs. But in the backdrop of that, like my campaign slogan, make Alabama local again. Like that's happened because we as a people have been too comfortable doing our thing. And we've not been forcing ourselves to be involved in our government as we should have been. And so, I bring it back to the people in the sense that, like, it's not a reprimand. It's not, to the people out there. It's an honor. It's our duty. It's a blessing, and we've got to stay involved, and not only in supporting financially our candidates, staying tuned into how they vote, right, making sure they're doing what they promised they would do, but also showing up and engaging in the process of the governing of our state. And that's what gets me excited about the future, when I see more and more people so engaged, unlike I feel like I've ever seen in my life. So have there been things that have been confirmed as the same? Yeah. Have I learned some things? For sure. You learn, more and more how to build relationships. You learn more and more who to reach out to, who to talk to, how to help your constituents, whether it's an issue with ADECA or ALDOT or, this group or that group or whatever. Those are all things that you have to learn, and I'm still learning. There's lots to learn. But you also learn in the context of your principles how to hold fast when your courage is tested and tried, and how to use your position to make the people aware of what's going on, because that's where the magic happens. When the people get involved in
Right.
mass,
Well,
then change happens.
my, and it's a frustration of mine, but I'm a long time observer of this, and here lately, as I've gotten more immersed in it, it took me 20 years to figure out Alabama politics. It's not easy. It's just a very tribal state politically.
Sure.
But I think part of the problem is, and I think you kind of hit on it, it's public engagement. That the system generally kind of performs as it is intended to, but the problem the problem is that you don't have as much public buy-in. You have low turnout in these Republican primaries. I don't think it's a true reflection of the state. A Republican supermajority that's not like hyper conservative is a little off-putting. But I think, like, as you're talking about, if the public were more engaged, if the public were more bought into the state level of politics, because I think the public does a pretty good job understanding federal politics, understanding what's going on in the country. But to a lot of people, and even candidates in some ways, look at what is going on in the state as kind of small potatoes. That's not as important as what's going on in the White House, and that impacts my 401k or whatever it is. And so the trick to me, and I don't know how to do that. I don't even know there's necessarily a responsibility from where I'm sitting here, but it is shows like this and what we do at 1819 and stuff, trying to get the public more bought into the system and understanding the system and why you need to pay attention to what the legislature's doing, who's running in the race and where they are and who's supporting them and so on and so forth. Because once you get that conquered, then you get more of a reflection of where I believe the state is.
Oh, 1,000%. And to that end, I mean, think about it. The Constitution was written for farmers. Like, our founding documents were written for farmers and the common agricultural folk to read and sit around the supper table and talk, debate. And that, the fact that that was the case and that was read and done that way throughout the tables and homes of our country reflects the fact that the people were passionate. They were engaged. They were involved. They weren't concerned about American Idol. They weren't concerned about, obsessed overly with sports or whatever. They were concerned and they were passionate about their faith and their freedoms and their families. And they took pride in the civic duties and responsibilities. And so, that's where what we've got to do, we got to glorify, magnify, build this up in the eyes of our people. Like, this is your glorious heritage. This is your privilege and your right and your duty and your blessing to take these documents, read, small discussion groups, iron sharpening iron, go for it, talk about it, get engaged. And when you do that, there's the only reason why you have, like you made the point, a super majority that doesn't seem to always reflect or hasn't historically always reflected what you feel like should be public policy for a very red state, is because our people have not been engaged and involved. And again, that's where I'm trying to use every platform I can, like a bullhorn, to call the people of Alabama to get involved and to stand up and make your voice heard, talk to your legislator, talk to your senator, educate yourself, and, man, follow the example of the independent pharmacists. Man, they showed up and showed out, and they made a difference.
Representative, real quick, just a couple more minutes here before we got to let you go. But you got a couple of bills. Talk about what you got planned for the 2026 session.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a couple of things I feel really passionate about. Several things, but of the two that I pre-filed is HB 12 and HB 13. So HB 12 is the Alabama Right to Refuse Act. If you remember, you guys covered. I had a press conference with Heather Moore. She's got family and friends that have suffered from this. It's very simple. HB 12 is all about Alabama right to refuse. We're not doing vaccine mandates, okay? We're not doing mandates on our citizens. We're not doing mandates on our businesses. We're going to let that that decision be made between the people that it should be, which is between the doctor and the individuals involved on the basis of their personal medical history. And so, the fact that we're still having to deal with this, yeah, is it true that we got an administration in D.C. that's protecting us? Yes, which is why we need to pass the law now. While we don't have federal kickback opposition or people making excuses about losing federal dollars, we need to pass it now. So in a nutshell, I had to go to funerals. People died because of this. Let's take a stand. Alabama Right to Refuse Act, HB 12. And then the second one is HB 13, Lake and Riley Act, which you guys covered, last session. It passed the House, passed out of committee, and the Senate was just flying along, doing great. And then, of course, the Senate just kind of slowed down, filibustering and so forth. Some of the Democrats and a lot of good bills didn't make it across the finish line. But that my bill actually predates Senator Britt's, and it's from Georgia. And then in a nutshell, it's just, hey, state and local law enforcement, y'all get to enter into an MOU, a contractual agreed upon relationship with the federal government to enforce existing immigration laws. Because let's face it, state and local law enforcement, they know where the crime is. They know where the issues are. And hey, like my campaign slogan, let's make Alabama local again. Let's bring the responsibility and the authority to bear in our local law enforcement, local communities. And that's how we will ensure our safety, by us stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility for it.
Representative, we got to leave it there. We're a little long, but thanks for making time for us, and we'll do this again soon.
Sounds great. It's my honor. God bless you guys. Hope to have a great rest of the show and be praying for you.
Thank you. You're very, very kind. Representative Ernie Yarborough there. We got to get a timeout in here. Jeff Poor for Phil Williams on this Tuesday afternoon here on Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Jeff Poor-Ed on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you for listening, wherever you're listening. Apparently not VNN, WVNN, but we're glad you're with us either way. Keep hanging in there. We'll get it right here, hopefully soon. Text line 833-687-4448. Still to come. We're going to talk to Craig Monger, 1819 News, my colleague there. We'll talk about the now late John MacArthur. He'll make time for us, and we'll get into that. Just kind of what he meant to the sort of the evangelical Christianity in America, and I wanted to spend a little time on that. But Craig has a little bit to say about that. So we'll pick it up here, and you just heard Representative Yarborough, and I talk about this on my show a lot. I just think it's an important discussion, and part of the reason why I think it was important, Mobile, where I wound up now, I was host on FM Talk 106.5. It just kind of cut my teeth down here in journalism and understanding like how the state all works together and how important it is to have buy-in and what goes on in Montgomery. And a lot of times you don't. I mean, you really look at what's going on nationally, and you take that into consideration, and you talk about that, and you leave the local politics behind. And there's some profound implications there that get left behind because of that. But it's important to have at least a situational awareness, and that's why there's shows like this that are out there. Got to get a break. Went way long with Ernie in the last segment, so stay tuned. Jeff Poor in for Phil Williams here on Right Side Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Welcome back to Right Side Radio. Jeff Poor in for Phil on this Tuesday afternoon. Hour number 3 now underway. Text line, you need to be in touch with me, your fill-in host for the day. Jeff Poor, 833-687-4448. Who's Jeff Poor? You hear me during the Grand Council on Wednesdays, about 4 o'clock on Wednesdays when I do show up. Sometimes I don't for whatever reason. But I try my best. But here we are. You get me for the remainder of today's program. I'm the editor at 1819 News, 1819news.com. Also a radio host of some sorts down in Mobile, Alabama, down in the south. We got a signal there. Gets a lot, some of Mississippi, some of the Florida Gulf Coast, and a lot of the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of America, and but primarily Mobile, Baldwin counties. FM Talk 1065, the Jeff Poor Show. You ever down that way? Please check it out. And also, I'm an editor at Breitbart News. Run their TV vertical there. We monitor what goes on in the media, primarily cable news, but also broadcast news. And I'm a columnist at Lanny. I've been there for a little more than 20 years. So that's where you could find me if you're ever down that way. Check it out. But probably know me. Once upon a time, it's kind of poetic here to be filling in on my former time slot. With all the bells and whistles like interruptions and things like that, one could hope for in this grand homecoming. But it was Dale Jackson, of WVNN morning show fame, live local. He gave me my start in radio. Probably regrets it. So now on occasion they let me fill in on these airways, and it's good to be back. Let's get through some of these texts. Got some that piled up and just didn't get a chance to get to. This is for Phil, but we'll read it anyway. I'm at work. Just got a chance to see today's newsletter. I think you should add one more option to the poll. Who cares? Well, you add that to your poll. Who cares? Promises made, promises broken. It's typical of politicians. Unless someone shows us undeniable proof of any wrongdoing, can't we just move on? I guess we're talking about the Epstein saga, I assume.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would. I don't be so dismissive of this. If your government's doing something immoral or unethical, you need to. We should know about it. And this is the whole thing about a deep state. We have a deep state in the federal government. Now, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience in Washington, D.C., being around bureaucrats. They're not particularly impressive people. They're elitist. They look at you and fly over country and sneer at you. And they're just smart people. They make things happen. They believe you are... You need the federal government. You need them more than they need you. If it weren't for them, you would be barely able to tie your shoelaces in the morning. It's such a condescending sort of attitude. And like I said, I was in and amongst these people, and this is their lament. Like, whenever a Republican would win an election and we'd be at the bar, and they would just be complaining about, you guys just don't know what's good for you. And you get it more to the dark ops or whatever. I mean, there is a CIA. There are FBI. There are these intel agencies. And the more secretive they are, I guess, the smarter they tend to be. That's a true statement. If there was something unethical going on, and we don't know, there's a lot of speculation out there, and there's a lot of calls for concern. So there's a reason to care about this. Now, there may not be anything there either. There may be absolutely nothing there. And they may have overhyped it for the sake of election. But they need to tell us that. This attitude that That's yesterday's news. The guy was a creep. He's dead now. Why does it matter? Just isn't going to be satisfactory for people. It just isn't. And what Democrats are doing, they're weaponizing it. Now, it took them a few days. It took them a lot longer than I thought it would. But here's why you should care. If you really want Trump's agenda, or the MAGA agenda, whatever it is, to be fulfilled, it's a game of politics. That's how we resolve our differences in this country. It's like the basis of the civil society. We do it through politics, and the Democrats are winning the political game. And they appear to be on the verge of winning the political game on this. Just in the court of public opinion, at least. It's going to stall out the Trump agenda. Just sow the seeds of doubt where half the country is going to be, almost half the country is going to be against you because they don't like the big bad orange man or whatever. And then you start dividing the base up. And the base is not satisfied with what they voted for. Now, some of you will be, and you think this is irrelevant, but this is why you should care. Those who do care that are among the base may not show up for the next election. And they're like, we tried. To hell with this. You promised us something. You're just another politician like all the rest. They need to do something here. It's not going to go away. And Democrats and the media are not going to let it go away. Now, do I think Pam Bondi ought to be fired? No. Listen, and I said this in the first hour, attorneys general are not popular. They've never been popular. I mean, you got to go back, and even then it's kind of an anomaly when they are. But prosecutors, your top law enforcement officer in the federal government, typically what happens is you got half the country who doesn't like you because you're on the other side. And then the base of the party in power feels underwhelmed. That there was not, you're not living up to your expectations. You're not playing by the rules of the other side. This was true for Joe Biden with Merrick Garland. I remember the calls for Doug Jones to replace him. It was true in the first Trump term. Jeff Sessions certainly knows something about that. Probably a lot of you listening felt like he betrayed Trump by recusing himself in that Russia hoax. Barr certainly wasn't popular. There's nothing you could really do about it. Now, the problem the Trump administration has, even if he wanted to fire Pam Bondi, there is absolutely no way you're going to get another candidate or appointee confirmed by the United States Senate. The political capital just isn't there right now after the big, beautiful bill. So it's not so much you guys who are, wherever you line up on this is fine. But I would put it on the Trump administration to kind of give a better explanation than they've given. And what Tommy Tuberville and others are saying that this needs to, you just need to move on here. It's just not going to be satisfactory, I believe. Adam says he's already on YouTube. Hi, Adam. Harris talking about what's wrong with WVNN. It's just like things have never changed. Amy, speaking of local politics, how can you have someone like Jesse Battles, who ran a campaign for the Alabama Democratic Minority Leader, be allowed to currently run for Alabama Senate District 10 as a Republican? Until we stop allowing rhinos as Republicans, we will keep having problems in Alabama during the legislative session. That's Paul from Gadsden. Or it says Amy, but Paul signs it. Paul, the problem with this state, from the Indian Reconstruction forward till 2010, Democrats dominated the state. Now, it's not like Democrats like you think in 2025. They're not big woke. They weren't woke lefties, but they believed in the power of government. Culturally conservative, church-going, God-fearing Democrats. That's doesn't exist in today's era. And if you wanted to get in elective office for a lot of places in Alabama, you had to be a Democrat. The wounds of the Civil War, let's say, stuck with Alabama for way too long. And the state would not vote for a Republican. Why? Lincoln and Reconstruction Republicans. So Democrats ran Alabama for all these years. And we were talking to Representative Yarborough about this in the last hour. And it took 2010, the Tea Party wave, to finally get things to where they needed to be, but we're still not 100% there. So we'll put a pause on that. Let's work in a break here. I'll pick it up on the other side. Jeff Porter for Phil Williams on this on this Tuesday afternoon here on Right Side Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Jeff Puller in on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams. Good to be with you back at my old stomping grounds, WVNN, and elsewhere, also on the internet and Tennessee, I understand. Text line 833-687-4448. You want to be in touch with the program, hit us up there on that text line, and I'll respond to your text. Back to Paul from Gadsden on the discussion about Jesse Battles. So there was a time to get to where they needed to be. Republicans, you had to be open to the idea of Democrats switching parties, and that was just a reality to get to a Republican majority. Now, I mean, you kind of look at the landscape now, and that's slowly becoming less of a thing. It still happens. But the way I would tell you to look at it is it's going to take a little time before you have a true, like, Republican, sort of born and bred Republican control of state government. I mean, Senator Butler was a former Democrat who sits in that seat now. And the Speaker of the House, a former Democrat. There's a lot of Democrat guys who I think identify with the Democratic Party. And then they switched. They said, you know, the Democratic Party got way too radical. And they more closely identified with the Republican Party. And they're just, politics is local. The people who elect them look at them and say, okay, I believe you. I think your conservative credentials are enough here that we'll recognize you as a Republican. That's up to the party. It's up to the individual county parties. It's up to the state party, depending on where you run. But it's just a reality of a state that was a holdout for so many years as a Democratic state. It wasn't until 80, guys, that Alabama went for Reagan. And then it took another 30 years before Montgomery finally went Republican. I mean, I remember as Paul Hubbard, and he just bankrolled Democrats. The teachers union it remains very strong in this state. Public sector unions, pro-institutionalist sort of government types. And really, Paul, what I would tell you, like, there will be other choices in that Republican primary in Senate District 10. And if you find that candidate to be objectionable, then you don't vote for him. But just know that at like one time in this state, the best you were going to get was a conservative Democrat. And do you automatically reject somebody? Maybe they saw a new way forward, or for a lot of people, you see the ways of the Democratic Party from within, and you realize that this isn't good. I was sold a bill of goods. I had to learn the hard way. But I think over time that will be less of a thing. And I think, my hope, I mean, the numbers back this up because the Alabama legislature is super majority Republican. Now, it doesn't act necessarily like a super majority body, and it leaves a little to be desired, but it's just a process. The pendulum just swings where it needs to go, where nature takes it. Did the state really move that far to the right in 2010? Not necessarily. It just realized that the Democratic brand was more of a left center and not a populist party, not a blue collar working man party anymore. That it got it, wanted to expand the entitlement state. Believed in the social safety net covering more people than just a bare bones minimum to survive. And had some very whacked out views about cultural issues, the long-held standard cultural issues in America. Same-sex marriage, abortion, and really what we kind of lived with for the course of human history, if you will. And now the Democratic Party is barely recognizable from what it was 50 years ago. So I think people move. So I would say just don't vote for the guy if you don't like Mr. Battles. Jeff in Indiana. Jeff, the problem with the Epstein stuff is that Republicans are too intelligent. We know when we've been given a bunch of hooey. Democrats, on the other hand, aren't very smart and will not go against their own because they're branded zombies and will believe anything they're told. Well, they don't. Here's what's interesting. How you say that, Jeff. I don't think it's that at all. I don't think they're zombies. I think they're just like, you could boil every policy argument down to this. The individual and the rights of the individual and the good of the collective. And that's right versus left right there. The collective being the left and the individual being the right. Ultimately, it comes down to that. So, they're team players, and then they stick to a script, and they look at, like, buying into the narrative about whatever they want to believe about Epstein. It's changed, like, in the last few hours, even, the way they are talking about it. But the end goal is sort of the good of the collective, and you got to play team ball, and you all got to sing from the same hymnal. And I don't understand. It's like in Congress, how Nancy Pelosi is able to keep it together much, much better than any Republican speaker. And it's just because I think it's their value system and the way they look at the world. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Got to get a break in here. We'll be right back. Jeff Porter for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
Welcome back to Right Side Radio. Jeff Pour in on this Tuesday afternoon for Phil Williams. We're appreciative of the time. Good to be with you, solid conservative and just plain right. Well, we'll kind of wind down the day here with my next guest. He's my colleague at 1819 News, 1819news.com. I encourage everybody to go check that out. But Craig Monger is with us. Craig, good afternoon. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for making time for us. And I saw your one of your social media posts, and I thought, well, this was important to do. And John MacArthur, a pastor, Sun Valley, California, Grace Community Church, kind of well known, had a radio show. I became aware of him with my MacArthur Study Bible. And kind of did a deep dive and learned more about him. But it's only maybe more recently. But his passing's a big deal, and I thought it was important that we at least acknowledge, his kind of legacy here. But you know more about what he did and his importance to evangelical Christianity in America. What do we need to know?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to say. I mean, the man almost reached his 90th birthday, and I was a huge fan of him, and it definitely sucked that he passed away. But yeah, he was doing his thing before the internet, before pastors were really, there were celebrity pastors, and he started a small church in California, which. At that time in the 70s, I believe is when it was around, was not excuse me, I completely lost my train of thought. So let me continue on with okay, sorry. He's been doing his thing in California for a long time, which isn't exactly a welcoming place for evangelical Christianity. And lo and behold, he had what is defined as a mega church, but it never had the same trappings that mega churches have. Like, he's not a Joel Osteen character who wears, $10,000, jewelry and
hair gel and
people. Yeah, hair gel. So he was actually, my first exposure to him was actually before I became a Christian, and it was an old clip of him on Larry King talking to Gavin Newsom, who was the mayor of LA at that time. And he absolutely leveled him because there was Newsom doing I'm a Christian, I believe this. And you had John MacArthur showing up on Larry King, defending the truth of the gospel back when that just wasn't what you did.
Right.
And so, like you said, his study Bible, he's written other books. I've read just about every book that he's written. And what he did mainly that was very important to a lot of evangelicals was he made Calvinism popular. He was a Calvinist. He believed in the doctrine of election. And at the time where he was talking about it, it wasn't very widespread in America because of dispensationalism, for instance, has sort of become the du jour of the day. And so he came and he was able to inject Calvinism into the general psyche of the American people and the ones that loved him and listened to him. So again, I'm getting lost in the sauce a bit here because I can't. You would need hours to go through how effective and relevant he was.
I kind of like where you were going with it. I mean, a time pre-internet, but maybe even I grew up and I remember the 80s and sort of the televangelist, and that was a big deal. And it was never like his ambition to sit out and become something of that sort, and have, where in a lot of these, prosperity gospel or whatever type churches, I mean, they were just putting membership or followers or whatever ahead of what at least a ground level sort of understanding of Christianity, and they were trying to make it, I don't know, like kind of oversimplify it or sugarcoat it or whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean that we still are living with that today, but my sort of limited knowledge here, I would say, about MacArthur is that he was kind of the antithesis to that.
Yeah, he absolutely was. He was what a lot of people can kind of take for granted, especially in the Christian community. A lot of the things that they take for granted were been under attack in our countries from people like Gavin Newsom, who talk about, oh, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe what it says about homosexuality or divorce or abortion or any of this stuff. And there was John MacArthur showing up not by himself to defend what the Bible says, and nobody really was doing that. And with good doctrine, good theology. You had like your Jerry Falwells, who had kind of silly doctrine, and then but John MacArthur wasn't that. He wasn't a silly doctrine. He was orthodox. He knew his history. He knew his Bible, front and back. And another thing is he was really the first one to bring a lot of pastors together and sort of create this celebrity pastor venue where you're a celebrity, but you're not like a sleazy celebrity. Like you're a celebrity for Christians. John MacArthur was like that. So was R.C. Sproul, who similarly died not about 10 years ago. And him and MacArthur were great friends. And yeah, and again, I just can't stress enough. John MacArthur made it through his entire career, almost 90 years on this earth. No scandals, no sexual immorality, no taking money, no drunk driving, nothing. He had a wife, had kids. That was it.
Well, he didn't have to cut corners. He didn't have to cut corners to grow a following, and you see so much of that today. And I mean, we talk about this all the time. The church is on the decline in America, and I don't know what the answer is, but the answer for a lot of people is to we need to be more inclusive. We don't need to talk about this or that part of the Bible. And we need to have this, I called it sugarcoating, but I don't know. And he never had to do that and was able to overcome that without these sort of cookie cutter approaches.
Yeah, and he started Grace to You, which is still up and on the internet, and everyone can go and listen to his old sermons. And again, he's not changed. I'm sure his ideas changed, but was always, you go watch videos of him when he's like a young, strapping guy. He's the same guy. And he didn't have to do any of the things that we see a lot of popular evangelicals doing, which is distorting the Bible's message, say on homosexuality or abortion or immigration or anything. And he was coming up doing what nobody else would do at that time, and go on the radio, go on the TV, and defend Christianity to the public. And his effects, not with just his study Bible, but his commentaries are very popular. He's written so many more books. But the main thing that he did is, like I said, is he brought Calvinism into the mainstream in America, which, again, I don't know where you stand on that, but for me, I think that is a net positive. And, the broader section of Reformed theology, which is people who follow the Calvinist doctrine, it has exploded in recent years, mainly due to MacArthur and people like him that he would platform and have these discussions. So the Christian church owes him a massive debt. And I said it in my post, and I believe it's true. I don't think that there might not be a single Christian that living today that has not in some way been affected by MacArthur, because he's taught many people, he's inspired so many people, he's written so many books. Like if anyone has been, I can't think of a person in history other than maybe the Apostle Paul or the apostles of Jesus that has had such a profound effect on a culture simply by just living well and finishing well. He like I said, he finished well. That's every Christian should want to do that. Reach the end of your life. You're married, got kids, grandkids, I'm sure some great grandkids, and not a scandal around, no sexual immorality, no embezzlement, none of that. he was a great man, and he was we were this country was undeserving of him, and I think that in years forward he's going to be remembered as probably the most significant political / religious figure in the past 2 centuries, maybe even longer than that.
We'll wrap it up on this. Like, where does it go from here? It doesn't. You look around. I think like the Franklin Grahams and guys like that. You don't really. I don't see a real deep bench beyond this, and I think that's going to be a problem ultimately.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, it already has become a problem because so many of the people that were, 20, 25 years ago on the stage with MacArthur have either shifted away from the faith altogether, have committed some heinous sin, Steve Lawson being one the most recently, and Ravi Zacharias, people that get involved in these scandals. There's not a lot of people that have his boldness and his courage to go forward. And I honestly think that the newest generation of people that are Calvinists or MacArthurites, I think they sort of lost a lot of their credibility after COVID, and John MacArthur did not. So there's no one that's going to take the torch, but there are going to be a lot of people that will try. But I don't think we're going to see a figure like him until the end times, whenever that is, because you don't see that. You don't have that same vociferousness, the same tenacity to go on, and now it's people tweeting at one another, angry or trying to settle theological debates over the internet, and that wasn't his style, and that's why he was so loved and effective.
Yeah, well, he stuck to his position, and he didn't really need to have these online debates. Hey, Craig, folks want to find you online or check out your work. Where can they look?
Well, they can find me on Twitter and Facebook under Craig Monger. My Twitter username is about to get changed, so I'll use a different one. So I won't say what it is now, but just look up Craig Monger and you'll see me.
All right, and y'all can also check out his work, 1819 News, 1819news.com. Craig, thanks for making time for us.
No problem. Thanks, Jeff. Anytime.
All right, Craig Monger, ladies and gentlemen. We got to get a break in here. One more to go. Jeff Bohr for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just played right. This is winding down for me, but just once again, thanks for enduring kind of a mediocre performance compared to Phil, but we do the best we can. You ever want to check us out, 1819 News, 1819news.com, and if you're ever down Mobile, FM Talk 106.5. Brandon writes, I just turned on the radio on. I'm a Christian, never heard of the MacArthur Guide. Calvinism is just flat out or false doctrine. It contradicts the Bible in many ways. Well, sure. I mean, everybody has their opinion. John MacArthur, if you had never heard of him, Google him and just at least check him out. But he was a known commodity. And I remember seeing him on cable news, and it was the big debate about parts of the Bible and omitting them, and he never wavered. He had a very widely popular radio show. He has a study Bible that sold millions of copies. I just encourage you to check him out if you've never heard of him. But you do what you got to do there. Real quick, got some announcements, JP.
Yeah, I just want to pop in and remind folks tonight we have another episode of the Just Right podcast with Phil Williams, who does long-form podcasts with various guests. And we have Brian Dawson tonight, who's the CEO of 1819 News, works with Jeff, and he's got an amazing story, facing, I believe, 384 years in prison at one point, coming to know Jesus in prison, and then meeting his future wife in prison, and then coming out, starting 1819 News, and bringing it to what it is today. So it's a fantastic conversation. You guys want to check it out on our YouTube channel. We'll be live premiering at 6 o'clock tonight, and it'll also be on audio podcast as well, where you can catch the replays of the radio show. So make sure to check it out.
The Right Side Media empire is growing, isn't it?
It is. The Phil Williams Right Side Media Empire. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember, and then we kind of watched it come along over. It's now it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but now several years into it.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until they talked about it on the podcast. So 1819 and Right Side Media kind of started in the same breath, same time, and both growing, God willing, and it's been great to see, great to be a part of as well.
Yeah, they kind of offshoots of the Alabama Policy Institute.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Right Side, it was 1819, and the Alabama Center for Law and Liberty, both all still running strong today. But it has grown, and it does sound like you guys are doing a lot more than just this broadcast. And it's important to familiarize yourself with all the options here.
Oh, yeah, and God's blessed us to go into the Chattanooga area on WGOW and Auburn on WANI, and we have various podcasters under our umbrella, and this long-form podcast we've been very excited to start. We've had a lot of interesting guests on. We've had Jared Hudson was our first one. We had Tom Boyer, who escaped communist Vietnam. We had Mike Duran as well, Conrad Thompson, and then the latest edition tonight with Brian Dawson. So it's been quite fun to see these interesting guests with their awesome backstories. Yeah, it's been very fun.
I forgot y'all were on Auburn on that WANI down there. I listened to that station for years. It used to be part of it's not part of Radio Alabama, but back when Speaker Hubbard owned it, that's a big get.
Yeah, it's we're on the 5 to 8 slot after Hannity, so it's been a great addition to the lineup. A lot of great listeners down on WANI. Even though they're not able to hear us live, we still get texts occasionally from them when they're listening during that time slot. So yeah, it's awesome to be on that radio show as well.
Yeah, so Lee County, you're listening later on tonight, or I guess would be now if you're listening.
Yeah, in about 5 minutes, yeah.
Big shout out to my my friends in Lee County, because I'm an Auburn grad, and 6 wonderful years there, JP. And I wasn't, it was wasn't the greatest student, but also did the co-op thing. Did a work a quarter, go to school a quarter, work a quarter. And that helped me in the end getting what is now a wall decoration, my Auburn diploma.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see they haven't kicked us off yet because of me being a Bama guy. But Phil's an Auburn guy, so I guess he balances us out. But yeah, I mean, it was fun during basketball season with knowing that we were on in Auburn too. I have a sports segment on here every Friday of poking fun at the Aubs, but it's all in love. It's all in love, of course.
Well, I'm an Auburn season ticket holder. My 4-year-old and I go to most of the home games. Every now and then I'll make the journey by myself. But it's it's different. And I spent a lot of time in Tuscaloosa too. But as like kind of an Auburn guy going back, and now knowing having a basis to compare the two, it's hard. I'm not gonna lie.
What?
Y'all went to Iron Bowl, and we didn't win by 50. What's wrong here?
Yeah, that's true.
We win. We're tearing down the town, man. They're shutting down College Street, and it's celebration time. It's like New Year's Eve in Auburn.
Well, we got about 30 seconds left, but do you think Bruce Pearl's going to run for Senate? I see that story starting to rear its head again.
No, and I know he flirted with it. I know he flew to D.C. and looked at it, and he met with some important people. A lot of people were courting him, JP, to run for that seat, but he didn't. It doesn't sound like he's going to pull the trigger. I believe that Mike Rogers is going to step away, and in this next cycle, he'll run one more time. And then I can see Bruce Pearl run for that congressional seat, the 3rd Congressional District.
That would be interesting.
Because he'd be a lock for that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for holding my hand this afternoon, JP. These fill-in duties are always just hard to get the timing down.
Yeah, it was fun. Appreciate you coming on.
All right. Well, that's Jeff Poor, me filling in for Phil Williams this Tuesday afternoon. Y'all stay safe out there. Right Side Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right.